I'm Georgina Hall, and this is the Phemale Empowered Podcast, inspired by the casual conversations I've had with thousands of women over my career in coaching. This is not just another wanky women's wellness podcast. We are bringing the uprising. Hi friends, welcome to the Phemale Empowered Podcast. I am your host, Georgina Hall, personal trainer, online coach, and offerer of opinions on all things. Today, I'm joined by Sharon McArthur from Menopause.co.uk. Hi, Sharon.
Hello.
Here is a subject that I actually don't have a lot of opinions on.
Yeah, that's not unusual. Most people have never heard about menopause. So intellectually, this is why I do what I do, because intellectually, when I like to call it my magic, Georgina, when my magic began. So I'm 53 this year. I can hardly believe it. I thought I'd be dead by now. When you're a teenager, you think, oh my God, 50 is ancient. And now I'm nearly 53, which is only 7 years away from 60. I don't even know how that's happened. And I couldn't believe when somebody suggested at the age of about 47, 48, when the magic began for me, somebody dared to suggest I could be going through the menopause. And I was absolutely disgusted. I was like, how dare you think that could be happening to me? That thing only happens to other people. And this was the big shocker for me, because I'd like to think I was particularly street smart. I'd been a senior leader in a FTSE 100 company. I'd been accountable for millions of pounds worth of revenue. I'd like to know that I knew a lot of things about a lot of things. But yet I had literally no bloody idea about this menopause thing until it started to happen to me.
Yeah, it's amazing to say that 50% of the population are going to go through it. How little we know and how little it's talked about. And I was just telling you before we press record about, I've got a group of 120 females training and coaching online in all things nutrition and well-being, mental health, physical health. And then when it came to asking, do you have any questions about the menopause? I had an influx. And I don't know the answers. Like whenever I answer questions about menopause, I have to go and look into it as well. So half the things that people have asked me, I've got no idea. And like you said, it seems like a long way off for me to have to worry about for myself. So I think we need to get clued up, don't we?
Yeah, well, absolutely. And as I say to all the women that I meet, coming to a body near you at some point. So the point being is, Georgina, when you say 50%, what you need to do is expand that, because it's even more ridiculously bad, as in the fact that we don't talk about it. It's 100% of 50%. So 100% of reproducing females will go through the life event known as menopause, whether they like it or not. So it's not like maybe I won the lottery at the weekend. I think, well, I've got a spare million. I know what I'll do is I'll opt out of that menopause thing. You can't do it. So 100% of women won't be mothers. So I'll use me. I'm not a parent, so it was my choice. So I knew at the age of 14, when me and my nana, I distinctly remember, we're having a chat in a backyard, and she must have said something about, somebody who will look after you when you're old. And my immediate answer was, well, nana, I'll be dead when I'm old. And the shocking thing is, I'm probably older than she was when we were having that conversation, and she was older than me then. And so all through my lifetime, I knew I didn't really think I was cut out to be a mother. So my body, my choice. So I knew I wouldn't suffer from things like, postpartum psychosis or any postnatal depression or anything linked to hormones and pregnancy. But yet my body has taken me through menopause, whether I've liked it or not. So these are the crazy statistics that we need to really keep reminding ourselves of. So it's 100% of 50%.
Yeah. We're not opting in and opting out of this one, are we?
Well, you can't, and that's what it doesn't matter how much money you have or who you are. Your body will take you through menopause, whether you like it or not. And that was something. Well, that was something that I thought, that menopause thing. I've heard of it intellectually, of course, I've heard of it, and I've heard of this hot flush business. But whatever it is, this is going to be happening to or someone else. It's not going to be happening. So in my head, I'm vibrant, I'm young. I was a bloody middle-aged woman, but in my head, I know it's not going to happen to me. I'm fit well, I'm healthy, I'm all of these things. That was a load of bollocks.
You're scaring me, Sharon. This is becoming very real to 33-year-old me.
Well, but the good thing is, Georgina, and I say this all the time with the sessions, because I go to organisations, that's what I do, because the upshot of this ignorance is what I keep saying. So ignorance can no longer be an excuse. Because the upshot of this level of ignorance, because nobody's given us the girl chat.
Yeah.
So let's call this the girl chat. So I don't know if you had the girl chat when you were at school.
Yeah.
But I had the girl chat when I was about age 10 or 11. And I always say, you know, any boys in my school wouldn't have ever known about the girl chat because they were out playing football. So me and the other 10 and 11-year-olds were like herded in a classroom. And I was told I was going to bleed every month for probably 30 years. I was like, I'm going to bleed every month for 30 years. Yes, and this is quite normal. I was like, really, is it? And then I was shown something called a Dr. White's belt, which terrified the bejesus out of it. So if you don't know what one of those is because you're too young, Google it. It's terrifying.
Oh, no.
And
I don't think I'm going to Google that, you know.
Well, when you're 10 or 11 and you're shown this, I would describe it as a contraption because, like I say, I'm considerably older than you. But the biggest stressor that I had at age 10 or 11 was I going to wear, what was I going to wear at the school disco? And was I going to get my French homework done on time? And so now in the 21st century, you know, we've got more women who are lone parent families, who are the main wage earners. We're being encouraged through things like gender pay gap, you know, diversity, equality, inclusion, to do more and more, quite rightly so. You know, there's a big focus on mental health and well-being. Yet I rock up to organisations, they'll say, menopause, and they'll go, you know, they're doing brilliant stuff. Look at all this well-being information. I'll go, what we're doing. I'll go, menopause. They go, no. And I'm like, 100%. Like 100%.
Yeah. Whenever I think about well-being within organizations, I just think we put on yoga once a week.
Eat some fruit.
Yeah, rather than real life, you know, helpful scenario. And we did a podcast on menstrual cycle a while back with a good friend, Louise Watson. And even then, when we were discussing the menstrual cycle, we were like, this isn't really talked about either. And she describes it in seasons. So you go through the seasons. Winter is when you bleed, then you get spring, you feel a bit better. Summer, oh, we're all hazy and loving life and symmetrical and putting ourselves out there. Autumn, we start to die a little bit and go into winter. But what about the seasons of life? Because to me, I'm envisaging menopause then being the winter of your full menstrual cycle.
The winter of our discontent.
The winter of our discontent.
I love it. Well, it's the end of your fertility is what it is. That's what it is. So menopause itself. So if we use this term, or we hear this term all the time, menopause, and we really need to stop using that term because the menopause itself means this and only this. It means you haven't had a period for 12 consecutive calendar months. That is all it means. So if you have a cheeky period at month 10 or 11, you can't go, oh, I'll just ignore that. You've literally got to go back to the start.
Oh, right, okay.
And count again. Now that really only applies if you want to take stuff like HRT because there's two different types. But menopause, the term technically means that and only that you have not had a period for 12 consecutive calendar months. That is it. And then the terms that nobody talks about that we really should be using is the term perimenopause and postmenopause.
Yeah, a lot of people have asked about perimenopause.
Well, perimenopause, I'm going to be very Sharon-like and very simplistic in my description. It's when the magic begins.
Now, this sounds more fun, yeah.
It's when depends what you think, how extreme you like your magic, I suppose. So it's when the magic begins. But the difficulty is, so this is when your hormones are starting to fluctuate. So there can be up days and down days. And the really difficult thing for women is, so again, I'm going to describe this medically. So I'm not a medical professional and I'm not medically trained, but there's something called NICE guidelines, which is what doctors are meant to use. Sadly, it seems many women that I've met, hundreds and hundreds, probably into the thousands now, are being let down by GPs. So what I say to the women out there is you need to do your research. You also need to do this. But check out my website because I've written blog posts on things like how to speak to your doctors, and I've written some useful things, hopefully.
That's menopause.co.uk.
Yeah.
I'll link to in the show notes.
Yeah, do. So menopause, perimenopause, you could start to get symptoms of menopause, but not even know that you're going through menopause, which is what's happened to me and happened to many women that I've met. So I thought in my absolute and utter ignorance, well, I know about this menopause thing because I'll just wake up one day and I just won't have any more periods. That's what it'll be like. That's the level of ignorance that surrounded the menopause for me. That is not mostly how it works for most of us. So what I'm going to say is 100% of women will go through the life event known as menopause. 100% of reproducing females will go through that life event. What you really, really want is a ticket for what I'm calling the 20% club. Because 20% of women will have little or no symptoms. 20%.
Right, we
now,
want to be in that 20%.
I'd be a millionaire, Rodney. People go, oh, how would I get one of them tickets? I'm like, well, I'd be a millionaire if I could get you one of them, wouldn't I? But the good news is 20% of women out there will have little or no symptoms. Two bad things about that. Well, the not great news is most of you listening will be in my club, the 80% club. So I'm in the 80% club, which means the majority of women will be impacted by symptoms of those declining of hormones. And the other thing I want to say about the 20% club is if you work in an organisation, particularly where somebody in authority is in the 20% club, you can get a really sharp shift, really, because those types of women might say, oh, well, I don't know what all the problem was about with this menopause business, because it didn't happen to me.
Yeah, lack of empathy.
Absolutely. So it's just to be aware, 100% menopause will happen. 20% may have little or no symptoms, but most of us will be in my club, 80% club. So perimenopause, so I'll talk about me and my experience. So my first symptom started with what I would describe as night terrors. Now, that was me waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning for no apparent reason, feeling like totally like the world was going to end. Now, my boss was lovely because it was me, because I run 2 businesses. Now, my business was going really well. There was nothing going on in my life that would connect the dots for me feeling like the world was going to end over several episodes, over several months. Then my next symptom, now I know, was what would be described as night sweats. Now, I've always been jealous of sweaty girls. So if you were saying, right, Sharon, you're going to work out, I'm going to train you, you would think, well, she's not working very hard because she's not sweating very much. So I've always been jealous of sweaty girls, but I'm fortunate, I'm really, really lucky that when it comes to menopause and sweats and hot flushes and night sweats and stuff like that, I'm not a sweaty girl. So when my night sweats, as I would describe them, on hot flushes through the night began, I didn't associate that with menopause because I wasn't sweating. I wasn't sweating, but what it was doing was I was getting so hot, it would wake me up. Now, nothing wakes me up, Georgina. I can sleep through a hurricane. So to be woken up feeling really, really hot, and I'm normally only hot when I'm on fire. I'm a stereotypical freezing cold woman who's cold all the time. So again, but what you need to understand is all the while I was still having regular periods. So It's only on reflection, I went, that was probably the beginning of it. And this is what makes it really difficult. Your body isn't going to work in lovely, like in a sequence. It's not going to go, your periods will change, then you will have this, and then that will happen. It's all could be chaotic and really hard to understand. So a lot of women, I'm going to use a technical term, start to feel a bit meh. Roughly round. So what I'm going to say is medically, you would be described within the normal range of menopause, 45 and beyond.
Right, okay.
So when I was 47, 48, and somebody, like I say, dared to say to me, Sharon, you could be going through the menopause, I nearly savaged them, because in my mind's eye, that only happened to people who were probably in their 70s and who had walking sticks and hadn't worked for years. So that was absolutely, so I hope you forgive me, because that's an absolutely, utterly ignorant viewpoint, isn't it? But that's honestly what I thought, because I was in absolute ignorance. Nobody had ever talked to me or told me about this life event that happens to 100% of reproducing females. So perimenopause, at this point in your lifetime, you will at some point start to notice a change in your periods. But remember, you could be feeling meh before that happens. So this is where the ignorance sits really, because women are not connecting the dots. They're just going, feeling. So some classic symptoms of menopause aren't really hot flushes, although they seem to be the most talked about. The 2 most common symptoms the top 3 that are reported to me, because I have a Facebook page as well, and there's just under 4,000 women on there. So if anybody wants to join in that as well, it's just a community group. But I do a poll every 6 months, so it's not empirical research, but I just say, what's your top 3 symptoms? So number 1 and number 2, they've whizzed around, but we'll call them the top ones. Anxiety, brain fog. So, it's a thingy, it's a thangy. I've put my keys in the kettle. I've gone upstairs and I don't know what I'm doing up here. And then exhaustion.
Right. Loads of people have asked about anxiety, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely. The number one, stroke number two, most common. And this was one of the reasons that I set up Miss Menopause. There was a couple of big catalyst events for me. These were 4 years ago. And I went and did a mental health first aid course, which was 2 whole days in the classroom. It was really comprehensive. So I did, it was a really good course. But on the last half day, we were told we're going to talk about schizophrenia. And I said to the facilitator, well, could you tell me what percentage of the population would you say would have that condition of schizophrenia? And she said, probably up to 1%. Now, I said, that's still a lot. That's a lot of humans. That's a lot of humans. But where does menopause fit in your mental health first aid? Because it's 100% of reproducing females. She was like, oh, we don't cover that. Now, Georgina, it's still not being covered in those things, in those mental health first aid courses. So this is the thing that I go into organisations and say, you think you've got mental health and well-being covered. And what I say is I hope and I wish that the smallest percentage of anybody in your organisation will suffer from, let's call it, mental ill health. But when it comes to menopause, for the first time in a woman's life, she may start to feel that she's suffering from mental ill health. And this is because the power of your hormones, the power of those hormones make us the women that we are. And menopause is literally the end of your fertility. So your hormones are only going one way, that's south, and they're not coming back. So unless you elect to top them back up with something like HRT, hormone replacement therapy, which is what I'm on now, and actually at the end, I can tell you about that if we get to that. But it means by the time some women get to post-menopause, which I'll tell you what that description is in a minute, some women can have as little as up to 1% of hormones left. So is it any wonder that we're being affected physically and mentally?
Well, yeah, it'll be depression symptoms, won't it, if we talk alongside anxiety and the unknown.
Well, it's estimated, and again, who can quantify this because it's totally subjective, but it's estimated out of that 80% of women who'll be in my club, where you'll be impacted by a level of symptoms from those declining and ending hormones. It's estimated 1 in 4, so 25% of women will be really quite overwhelmed or could be by those symptoms. So depression, so really knocked for six by some of those symptoms. So the great news is, and I'm going to put some light to the shade, the great news is there are lots of options on how you can manage your menopause. And I haven't met a woman yet who said, Sharon, I've tried everything and nothing's worked. I haven't met that woman yet.
Okay.
But it's going to take some of you some energy, effort, and some hard work because it's not the sort of thing that you can just go, I've tried that. Did it work? No. What you're doing now? Nothing.
One of my questions that came through from a client was, is there any predetermined way to work out which treatments will best meet each person? Because the GP seems to just try it and see approach. And I did think that's kind of what we do in life. It's what we do in nutrition. It's what we do in training. Try it and see. It's all a bit of an experiment because it's so cool.
It's an absolute experiment. So if you could say all Sharons born in Newcastle with dodgy wallpaper, they would all have symptoms like.
You can't see Sharon's wallpaper. It's amazing, by the way. It's like a rainbow prism. It's like an LGBTQ psycho trip.
Look, and it goes all the way up the ceiling. Look, there's even more. So yeah, it would be much simpler if you could say, all Georginas born in whenever would have these types of symptoms and they could manage them like this. And this is what makes it so incredibly difficult for some women and so energy sapping. So I've met identical twin sisters where one said my menopause was like this and the one went, mine was totally opposite. You can't predetermine it. So I can't tell you. The last person to know is you, even though it's your body, and a medical professional can't tell you either. Nobody can tell you, and this is what makes it really, really difficult. So perimenopause ultimately will mean at some point in that phase of your life, your periods will change. Ultimately, they will end. But it means that, so your periods will do one of two things at this phase. Ultimately, at some point, they will become less frequent. So that was what was happening to me. So I used to have regular light periods, and mine over that period of time. And I'm talking a couple of years here. I'm not just talking like days or weeks or months. were becoming more spaced out. So I'd go maybe 3 months, not have a period, and then maybe I'd have a period the next month, and then 5 months.
I think when that was happening, when that started happening, it was less frequent periods. What went through your mind?
Well, because I'd started to research and try and figure out what's happening, I had established it was probably this perimenopause thing. The other thing that I need to say to the women listening or the listeners is, in that perimenopause phase, some women will bleed more.
Right.
So some women will bleed more. So I thought I'd met somebody who was having a terrible time because she'd bled every day for 30 days. And then I met somebody just after Christmas on on one of the sessions that I do. She went, "Oh, I can beat that," as if it was like a lovely, gorgeous badge of honor. She went, "I've bled every day for a year." Exactly.
That's exhausting, isn't it?
And I said to her, "What have you done about that?" And guess what she'd said? Nothing.
Oh,
Nothing.
No.
Nothing.
And this, isn't it?
And this is the thing that I want to get across to people out there. I don't want to hear of any other woman allowing, and I'm purposely choosing this language, allowing themselves to become a victim of the menopause.
Yes, love this. Preach.
No more victim of menopause, because I just want to tell you this: menopause can last on average 5 to 7 years. 10 years is not uncommon. And it's estimated now, because we're living into our 80s, it's estimated a woman now in the 21st century could spend up to a third of her lifetime in that menopausal state.
Wow.
Long time, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh.
So what I say is, you need to get out your slippers. So the key question for you to ask yourself is menopause impacting the quality of my life? Yes or no? Be a straight answer. Yes. And if it's a yes, you need to get busy and try and find a solution. So before I go on to that, I'll go on to what the term post-menopause means. So I was really...
The difference between accepting, which we need to accept this is happening, but then doing something about it, not accepting and going, oh, wait, this is happening, so...
My life's over.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, you can choose to be a victim if you want, but what I say to women who behave like that, I'll go, well, either shut up, because I'm quite brutal, or do something. If you want to do something, I'll help. I'll let's see what I can, let's chat about it. But if you're just prepared to and the thing is, I say this all the time. I told you I'm 53 this year. I technically believe I have lived longer than I will live. I think that's a statistical fact. So it means that I'm on a one-way street.
Oh,
I know, but it's nothing I'm not worried about that. I'm embracing that, because I haven't got time to faff about.
Right.
I've got time to waste.
You feel like you're living your life more purposefully.
Well, yeah, because when you're young, you've got all of your life ahead of you. When you get to like my type of age, it's on a one-way street, isn't it?
I think that when I get off this call with you, though, I think I'm going to live life more purposefully.
Well, good, because that's what it's meant. That's what you're meant to do. And the thing is, we don't age more well, do we? We're not getting more healthy as we age.
No, unfortunately not.
And so all of these things, you might not want to hear what I'm saying, but they're kind of factually correct. We don't age more well. So,
but I will say that, because a couple of people did ask about, oh, well, what can I do? Can I still lose weight after the menopause and this and that? Yes, you absolutely can still get healthy, because health means a lot of different things. You absolutely still can train. You can do strength training, because your testosterone has dropped, so you do need to do what you can for your muscles, for your bone density. So
I'm not saying you can't maintain health, but ultimately we're going on a one-way street, and we're not getting more healthy. Well, we're not getting more healthy, are we? So we can maintain our health as best we can through all of these brilliant interventions, but ultimately that's what's happening. So
Sharon, for the people who aren't watching the video, Sharon is doing a little kind of down the hill slide.
Well, we're on a little slide. But so post-menopause means this and only this. So I was really excited. I was like, oh, post-menopause, it must mean it's all over. It must mean it's all over. That's what I thought. So my symptoms range from, I've already told you, night terrors, night sweats. Then I would have day sweats. But remember, you wouldn't know that I was sweating, because I'm not a sweaty girl. Some women are having to change their bedclothes through the night. They're having to get changed through the day because literally it's like rivers of sweat.
Yeah, I'm one of life's sweaters.
Well, I've always been jealous of you, but never mind. When it comes to menopause, I'm I count myself very lucky. And then it was things like PMT times a million, as I describe it, where I'd be crying inappropriate, things like adverts for cat food, like, oh, that's so sad. And then within 60 seconds, wanting to murder the nearest human. So feeling like I was almost possessed, that I wasn't in control of my own mind and body. And then ultimately, the thing that was totally untenable for me in the end was the inability to remain asleep. So I could get to sleep, but I couldn't remain asleep. So my other half was really kind and he bought me one of those fitness trackers because he thought that was really helpful. So then I knew I wasn't sleeping. Before I felt like I wasn't sleeping, then I knew it was me more stressful. And I fell asleep driving the car, fell asleep at the wheel. Now, fortunately, thank goodness for me, it wasn't enough to swerve the car or crash, thank goodness. But you know that noddy head thing? I'll describe when I used to get the bus when I was at school, like that noddy head, you would fall asleep. I nodded myself asleep and awake at the wheel. So it got so bad that I could only drive for a maximum of 30 minutes before I'd have to pull over and have what I describe as a nana nap, because I just thought, oh my goodness, the menopause is going to kill me. It's going to kill me if I don't sort this out. So I'll come back to what I did in terms of solutions, but going back to post-menopause, this post-menopause things. So I was really excited. So I'd looked at my calendar. I was like, 11 months, no period, 12 consecutive calendar months is menopause. I'm like, it's coming up to month 12, how exciting. And I thought when I woke up the day after, it was going to be like, I don't know, a Tom Hanks movie that was going to be, that would just be amazing in the world. Let me tell you what it means. It just means they're not having periods anymore.
But you're still having the symptoms.
But all the magic can remain, absolutely.
Oh, no.
So this
be over as well. I was
No. So this is why you will meet and hear of women who are in their 60s, 70s, 80s. I've heard of a woman in her 90s who's still having symptoms. So they may not have had periods for 10, 20, 30 years, but they are still, the impact of those lost hormones are still impacting them. So this is what I'm saying to women out there. If, for example, you broke your leg, would you leave it untreated for 5 years? Would you leave it so maybe a toenail fell off, it went a bit black and a bit gammy? Maybe you had to have a little amputation. You'd go, Sharon, you're absolutely crazy. Nobody would do that. So what I'm saying is, why, oh why, when I ask that key question to the women that I meet, Sharon, and I say, what impact is menopause having on the quality of your life? And they go, most often, terrible, awful. What are you doing about it? Nothing. I'm just getting on with it. So I'm saying you owe it to yourself, surely, first and foremost, because remember, we're not aging more well. You can't put your life on hold and go, well, I was impacted for symptoms for 10 years. It was awful. Couldn't do this, that, and the other. Couldn't train, couldn't do whatever. I just put up with it. You're not going to get the time back. What are you doing that for? What would you do that for? Like I say, you wouldn't do it if you broke your leg. You wouldn't. You would be deemed to be a bit bizarre to do that. So what I'm saying is, when it comes to the subject of menopause, which is going to impact 100% of reproducing females, whether they like it or not, 10 years isn't uncommon. What are you going to do about it?
We need to do something, don't we?
We need to do something. So you've beautifully touched upon, I say you've got 4 main categories of options, is what I say. You've got the medical route, which is like your GP. So my story began where, so they've got the medical route, you've got the herbal route, then you've got what I call holistic, and then what you've got what I call DIY. So what you've touched upon, you know, what you eat, what you drink, what exercise to do. And all of those things are brilliant for well-being, full stop. But when you go down the medical route, so I started with the herbal route, because when I went on Dr. Google approximately 5 years ago, Dr. Google said sage leaf tablets, they're the thing to try. And I was like, oh my goodness, that's amazing. I'm going to get some of them. That's going to solve all my problems. So I rushed out, and me, didn't buy a little pot, bought a great big pot. And after 2 weeks of taking them, all I could taste was sage and onion stuffing. Made me feel sick. I was like, it's horrible. So if anyone wants a big pot of sage leaf tablets, be my guest. Yet other people maybe listening today will go, oh my goodness, I tried them and they really worked brilliantly for me. And this is the difficulty. What works for me and my story of menopause cannot necessarily be replicated for anybody else. So I'm saying everybody is unique. And we might have a similar story to tell, but it won't be exactly the same. And what might work for me in my body may not even touch the sides for you. And that's the learning experience, and that's the trial and error. And I would say it probably takes on, and I'm again, it's not empirical research, but out of all the hundreds of women I've met now, and probably into thousands, I would say it's probably taken at least 3 attempts of something before you find a solution or something that starts to work for you. So I started with sage leaf tablets. Then I had magnesium. I would have magnesium baths, through bath salts, and then magnesium sprays because I couldn't sleep. Then I was trying vitamin D, which I still take now, because it's good for everything and it's good for COVID and, tick, winner, chicken dinner, that's brilliant. And then I went to the doctor because I remember I nearly fell asleep. Well, I fell asleep at the wheel, nearly killed me. And they offered me antidepressants, which I know is the wrong thing as a first line of treatment for GPs to be offering. And then I had those for about 6 months, and it did help with hot flushes, but it didn't really do much else. And after 6 months, I wasn't really feeling any impact. And so
did your GP know, like the GP recognised, you probably perimenopausal, and is so they offered antidepressants rather than recognise that it was perimenopausal, or would they recommend antidepressants if they thought it was?
A lot of GPs are offering women as first line treatment of menopause antidepressants, which is not the right solution.
I had no idea about that.
So it's called NICE guidelines, and if anybody wants to look on Google, you can download NICE guidelines, which is what doctors were given in November 2015. So they haven't had them very long.
Right.
And if you were to read that, the first line of treatment for menopause is meant to be from a medical route, remember, because you've got all those 4 options. If you want to go down that medical route, GPs are meant to offer unless there's a medical reason, HRT is a first line of treatment. And what I want to say about HRT is a couple of things. Gels and patches, so anything transdermal, is less risk than tablets, even though the risk is small. Transdermal is even less risk again because you're not sending it through your liver. So unless there's a medical reason, women should be offered HRT if they want to go down that medical route. So I'm on HRT patches. And what I have to tell you is that within 2 weeks, it changed my life.
Really?
All of my symptoms disappeared.
Wow.
They've all gone. And so my intention, Georgina, is I'm planning on being on HRT until at least I retire. So there's this other myth and a legend out there, which I'll just highlight, where a lot of women say, well, there's no point in taking HRT, because it's terrible for you. Yes, it has a risk. The risk is small. But the biggest risk to women's health and breast cancer, that was a lot of the talk that was talked around with HRT, the biggest risk to women's health and breast cancer was because there was a study done on something called the British Menopause Society of 1,000 women aged 50 to 59. And the biggest risk to breast cancer and women's health is if you could see me, is anyone with a body mass index of 30 plus. My body mass index is 32. I'm a big one. And the point that I want to make is that is an enormous risk to breast cancer and women's health compared to HRT. So nearly 4 times as many women will get breast cancer be having a body mass index of 30 plus as they will on HRT. So the point being is when I'm stuffing a cream cake in my face, am I thinking, oh, Sharon, you're increasing your risk of breast cancer? Of course I'm not. So what I say to women is everything has a risk. Walking down the stairs has a risk. Crossing the road has a risk. Everything has a risk. It's the calculation of the risk you have to get. Yeah. So what I say to women is get the facts, not what your Auntie Mary told you.
Yeah,
or,
evidence.
Get the facts, and then you can make an informed decision because it's your body, your choice.
Because as you say, so many things are linked to different diseases.
Yes.
But it's just more talked about within HRT because I guess it's more niche, isn't it? And I say niche, I mean, it's 10% of the population. But it's a bit like the COVID vaccine, is that it's what we're talking about right now.
Yeah.
So the risks are what are being put out there.
Yeah, it's so, and I've met someone who sadly has the BRCA gene. So she had a double mastectomy. So, because her risk was deemed to be so high. Now, when it came to her menopause, she was in the 80% club, and she was the 1 in 4 who was having it really, really bad. So her medical team, obviously all the advice was because it's hormone related, and obviously this hormone replacement, it was absolutely, we do not advise HRT under any circumstance. Right. And she said, you know what? And this is what I say to women all the time. It's your body, your choice. What you choose to put in it, on it, or around it is up to you because it belongs to you. So she'd said to our medical team, look, I want to try it because I can't live my life in this way. The quality of my life is so poor. I don't know how long I've got on the planet. Nobody does. But I want to try it because I don't want to live my life. I don't feel like I've got much of a life. So remember, even against medical advice, surely you can choose what you want. You can say to the, you can ask, and pertinent questions to ask GPs are, what's the medical risk? Because it seems, and sadly to me, Georgina, a lot of women are getting personal opinions from GPs, but they're believing it to be medical advice. Right. So doctors will say things like, oh, you've been on your HRT too long. Now, most probably people like me were brought up to respect authority without question. So you kind of, oh, the doctor said, so, listen to what the doctor said. A lot of what they're saying, I think, is personal opinion. It's not medical. So, for example, I said, I'm planning on staying on my HRT until at least I retire, unless there's a medical reason. And that's because a lot of women aren't on their medication for long enough. So I'll give you an example, and this is why women think there's no point in taking HRT because it'll just bring the symptoms back. So I'll try and explain it as best I can. But if my body when I'm born is predetermined that I'm going to start my periods maybe age 10 and 3 months, and maybe my periods will end and symptoms will end when I'm 62 and 3 months. But no, I don't know this. You don't know this. Nobody knows this. Yeah. So nobody knows what this is going to be like. So I start on HRT, say at age 50, when I think, yeah, I would like to try that. And I only take my HRT for 5 years because the doctor maybe told me, oh, you've been on it long enough now, Sharon. I go, oh, right, okay. It's going to look like the symptoms have come back for the remaining 6 years. Because I didn't take it long enough because my body was always going to provide me with those gorgeous symptoms, whatever they might be, for 11 years.
Okay, so that was my next question about HRT is, do you kind of get weaned off it and see if the symptoms are still there, or do you just have it for a set amount of time?
It depends who your GP is, to be honest. And this is why I say to women, you need to control the relationship with your GP, not the other way around. So if, for example, I get to, say I don't retire till I'm 63, I might say, right, I want to wean myself off HRT. Now, I could be one of those women whose symptoms were pre-programmed to last for 20 years. I just don't know that. So I've got women in my group who it hasn't tended to be their choice that they've asked to be removed or to stop HRT. Most often it's your GP who'll be saying, oh, you've been on it long enough now.
So why would they say that? Why would the GP bring you off it?
Well, I don't want a doctor bash because where would we be without the NHS? And we've got some incredible doctors out there.
And actually, I've got a GP due to come on and I'm going to ask her about that as well.
But what I would say is doctors only learn electively on subjects like they're interested in once they've qualified. And many, many, many GPs out there haven't learned on this subject to the extent that they need to. So my personal opinion, and that's all it is, from all the hundreds and nearly thousands of women I've met, is I would say it's out of ignorance. So they're doing it out of goodwill. Oh, I believe. So they're probably thinking, I've read all this stuff too, or I've heard this stuff, because they're just humans. They're just humans. I believe you've been on this long enough. So I'll tell you a story. I had one woman. She was a CEO of a local charity up here in the northeast, and it was a large going concern. So she knew she was going through the perimenopause. So she went to her GP and asked what the options were, and they agreed HRT, and I think it was tablets that she got, but that was fine. And so she started to take them. And again, like a lot of women who will try HRT, so some it won't work for, some won't even want to take it. Remember, it's your body, your choice. No one's forcing you to do anything that you don't want to do. But for her, and like me, it started to transform. Well, it didn't transform her life. It gave her the quality of life that she'd always had. And that's all anybody wants. They don't want to be special or different. They just want to be the me. I just wanted to be the me I was before the magic began. And so within 2 years, her doctor, because you get regular checkups, and our doctor turned around and said, oh, I think you've been on that long enough. So like most of us, she didn't question it. She just went, oh, okay. And she said she had the worst year after that, the worst year. It was so bad, she wrote herself out. She was doing a massive restructure. Remember, we're looking for more, women in business. We're looking for more role models in business. She was a CEO of this quite large charity. She elected to write herself out with a plan and left because she felt she couldn't cope. She's since found out there was no the question to ask GPs is if they say, oh, you need to come off that, Sharon, you need to ask questions like, what's the medical reason?
Well, that was what I was getting at. Yeah, is there a higher risk for being in it a longer time?
Potentially, yes. Potentially, yes. So there are benefits and risks. So, for example, a great benefit is osteoporosis. HRT can help with that. So what I'm saying is, I haven't got time to go through, the benefits and the risks, but you can read up on it. So for me, unless there was a medical reason, so if I go for my regular checkups, of course, between now and the age of 63, which is 10 years for me, and the doctor says, in 3 years' time, oh, Sharon, your blood pressure's through the roof. It looks like you could have an imminent heart attack or stroke, and HRT isn't, could be playing a part in that. Of course, I'm going to listen. I'm not ridiculous. I'm going to listen to the information that's given to me. But if there's no medical reason, then I'm not prepared. Remember, I nearly crashed my car. I could have died at the wheel because of menopause. You don't get more extreme than that. So, risk, everything's got a risk. So it's my body, remember, my choice. What I choose to put on it, in it, or around it is up to me. So I'm going to keep getting the information, but ultimately I'm going to make the decision.
Yeah.
Because I'm not going to let a GP tell me, no, you can, or no, you can't. And if they did, I'd go and find a different one. But if there's a medical reason, yes, I'm going to listen to that sound advice, but I'm not just going to do what another human tells me to do, because maybe it's just their opinion. I'm not going to do that. Because I'm still going to walk out of that practice, a bit like that person I described. She had the worst year of her life, and she was really angry that she realized she didn't have to give that up. It was really what a doctor told her to do. She didn't question it. So what I'm saying is, we need to have a different type of relationship with our GPs. We need not to just take their advice without question.
Yeah, question.
Certainly. Yeah, well, certainly when it comes to the subject of menopause. So, you could some women might have the Mirena coil, which they've got for contraception. That can be kept and supplemented with other hormones if that works well for you. Some women are having it for the first time.
In your experience, have you seen, because somebody asked about being on contraception that stops your period anyway?
Yeah.
Would you still notice that you were perimenopausal, do you think?
You could do. It's a difficult one. So that would be things like the depot. There's a depot injection, there's implants and certain stuff like that. And I did have that at one point in my lifetime. So it just depends. But what I say to women is, look, if you're not having any symptoms and you have these solutions for you and your body for 10 years, and then you end up stopping them and you just go, your periods have ended, I didn't notice. That's a brilliant place to be, isn't it? But some women are worried, I haven't had any symptoms. I'm like, don't wish them upon yourself.
I've got my fingers crossed that I'm never going to know about it.
Do you know what I mean? So I think women are then, worried, I haven't had any symptoms. Well, that's brilliant. Maybe you're in the 20% club, or maybe you're having a solution that, because of who you are, the decline in your hormones, that the solution that you're having maybe through contraception or other things, you may not get any symptoms. That's a brilliant place to be. Don't worry that you're not having symptoms.
Don't feel sad about it.
Yeah, and the other thing that I want to say about symptoms, Georgina, is this, because it's really important, is if you're deemed to be 45 and above, you are deemed, remember, within the normal range of menopause symptoms from a medical perspective. What I want to say about this is, if you're 45 and above, if you are having classic symptoms like feeling anxious, not being able to remember the name for, it's a thingy, it's not a pen, you don't remember your own name, you're exhausted, and you've got itchy skin, maybe you're starting to sprout hairs from places you thought, that's terrible. There's a horrible statistic, because I do a lot of professional development, there was a horrible statistic a GP said when, by the time most women are in their 60s, they have 40% more facial hair. I was like, oh my goodness, that's me already, and I'm only 50 odd. So that's because of declines in hormones, powerful things. So women may get symptoms, but you may not get symptoms. So absolutely don't worry about it.
Someone's asked about symptoms. Can increased joint pain and muscle tension be a symptom?
Yep. Tick. I could give you, and when I do the sessions, I've got over 70 symptoms, not that I personally had. And I keep saying to women, because, I've got all of them. I'm like, it's not meant to be like bingo. You're not trying to get a full house here. Yeah. But they can be as random as itchy skin, bleeding gums, allergy flare-ups, allergies for the first time, more hair, less hair, feeling more sexual, feeling less sexual, there can be a static electricity, so becoming statically electrically charged. That's a really quite common symptom, when you touch things. That's a random thing to happen. But going back to the point I was making earlier, if you're 45 and above, if you're having some of these symptoms, it is likely that you are it's the menopause, it's perimenopause. That's probably likely what's happening. However, I want to caveat this by saying some other things mirror some of those symptoms beautifully, like thyroid problems, like diabetes, like some deficiencies, like vitamin D. So what I'm saying is the person who needs to know their body is who?
You.
Best of all, you. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. So each of us need to get comfortable and confident with what's right for our bodies. So you saying to me, Sharon, what do you think? Your body isn't my body, and it will behave and react entirely different from my body. So I can tell you my story, but it won't be your story. So it's really, really important that if something isn't right for you and your body, that you go and get it checked out. Yeah. Because the likelihood is, like I say, if you're 45 and above, it's likely to be menopausal. But I've got quite a few women on my Facebook page now who said, oh yeah, it was thyroid problems, and I was being treated for menopause. So what I'm saying is, you need to be tenacious. If what you're being offered as treatments isn't working, you need to keep, when it's not right.
And my clients will probably get sick of me going, have you tried journaling? But I think the more information that you've got, especially if you're going to go to the GP, which you should, is
write it down.
Yeah, write everything down. Keep a track of everything that you're feeling, when you're feeling it, symptoms, anything that makes it worse, anything that might make it better. And then even when you've been prescribed something or you started taking something, keep a track and keep a journal of how that's making you feel as well.
I'm totally with you. That's what you should be doing. You should write it down. And I don't know about you, but sometimes it's intimidating depending on which GP you go and see. So I think having written it down, I met one woman quite recently who wrote the GP a letter because they felt so intimidated. So she could hardly read it. She was so emotional, but at least she got a point across.
Yeah, it's such a good idea because sometimes, it causes a little bit of anxiety going to the GP or having to tell somebody else about your symptoms. If you can write it down, you can literally just go over the letter. Yeah. Right, you won't forget anything because you've got it all down when you were feeling calm and relaxed.
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect.
I'm a total fan. So you've got HRT, you've got Mirena coil, you've got some antidepressants, but sadly, a lot of GPs will seem to go, you'll go and they go, oh, here's some antidepressants. Unless your major symptom is major anxiety and depression, that is still not deemed to be the right move. And you can take...
Because you're not fixing the cause there, are you?
No.
But if you're going through all these symptoms, if you're not sleeping, that's going to cause some serious anxiety and probably depressive symptoms.
Massive. So I remember I was on HRT and I had antidepressants and I took them concurrently, but I didn't believe I ever needed antidepressants. So I weaned myself off those and I had no ill effect, as in the HRT had solved all of my stuff. Then we've got what I call the herbal route. Now, doctors would call that quackery, some of them, because it's not medically proven. However, there have been some studies done on what it would deem to be the herbal stuff. And that, and that could be, I could give you pages and pages and pages, maca root, even in primrose oil, black cohosh, the list goes on and on and on and on. So all I would say about the herbal route is this: do your research. So just because it sounds natural doesn't mean to say it's not necessarily harmful. Because there's been some studies done on things like black cohosh, for example, which loads of women will go, oh my goodness, I take this and it solved everything for me. But there were some medical studies done where it impacted the liver function of some women. So you've got to do your research. Yeah, for sure. The other things that I want to say is some of those options could interfere with conventional medicines. So if you're taking conventional medicines for any other things, again, you need to do your research because it could impede the impact of those conventional medicines. And the other two things I want to say is make sure that you're buying them from a reputable supplier, because we know sadly there's lunatics out there selling fake drugs, which, how can you even believe that? And then make sure that you know what the recommended daily dosages are, so you're not taking too much or too little of what it is that you're wanting to try. And then next you've got what I call the holistic route. So things like magnets for your knickers. Now, did you know you could get a magnet for your knickers?
Tell me about the magnets in the knickers.
Well, they're not cheap. And I tried one. I didn't buy one. And I just stuck to the shopping trolley because it was just at exactly the wrong place. But some women will swear by a magnet in their knickers now. And some women go, it didn't work at all. And so what I'll say is, you've got meditation.
Do you know what the theory is behind the magnet?
I guess it's, when women or when people wear magnet bracelets and things like that, it's whatever they like, this whole magnet. I don't know, because I'm not an expert on that, but there's a magnet for your knickers.
Wow.
There you go. They're about £40. They're called a lady care magnet. There you go. There's a plug for lady care. And some women love them. So like I say, meditation, mindfulness, I say to women, if swinging crystals from your nipples helps you, do it. It's your body, your choice, no judgment. Yeah. And then, like I say, finally, you've got what I call DIY, what you eat, what you drink, what exercise do you take. Smokers are deemed to go through menopause up to 2 years sooner than non-smokers, because we know smoking is not good for anything, really, is it? But keeping a food and drink diary. So there's some quite common triggers when it comes to menopause. So things like spicy food, sugar, alcohol, and caffeine. They can all be quite common triggers. So I had one woman who said, can't drink red wine anymore. Like, it's really bad for me, all these things. How much went, but I can drink gin. So you see, every cloud. So
yeah, so again, if you write it down and you keep a track of it, what's agitating you and what you can get away with.
And what I said earlier is I haven't met a woman yet who said, I've tried everything and nothing's worked. Remember, I haven't met that person yet. But like me, it took me 3 attempts, I can almost say 4, of trying different things before I found, I call it my silver bullet. I found the thing that helped to put me back to the state I was before my menopause began. So what I'm saying is, there's all of those options. I've galloped through them. But you have to go and do your research, because remember, it's your body. You will have a different perspective from your friends, from your mom, from whoever. You listen to yourself and what you want for you and your body. Don't do what other people, don't think what you think you should do. Do what you want to do. So someone will say to me, I don't want to touch that HRT. I don't want, it's not for me. And that's absolutely fine. But what I'm saying is, if the menopause is impacting you and the quality of your life, I don't want to hear that you're saying that you're doing nothing about it, because the last person to know how long those symptoms will last is you. And remember, average 5 to 7 years, and 10 years isn't uncommon.
I'm one of these people that would take anything I could get. I'd take everything.
Well, I was, in the end, I was like, Georgina, give us the drugs. Yeah. Give us the drugs.
I'll take the drugs. I'll take the herbs. Take it all.
Yeah. And like I say, I stick a patch on my backside twice a week, and that's all that I have to do. And, and it got to a point where I thought, because again, you've got nothing to compare it to. As we age, we just think, oh, this is what getting older might feel like, because we've got nothing to compare it to. So it got to a point where I couldn't even sleep through the night. I wasn't sleeping anyway, without getting up to go to the bathroom for a wee. And I thought, my bladder's just shrunk to the size of a pea. That's what happens when you get older. That was menopause related. It was hormones. I can sleep through the night for 7-8 hours now. It was amazing.
Oh, that is good. That has been the light at the end of this tunnel, actually, because as soon as you mentioned not sleeping, I was like, that was what'll kill me, not sleeping.
But that might not be a symptom. So you might be in the 20% club.
I'm going to be. I've already decided.
Well, you get in that 20% club.
I'm going to spend the next 10 to 20 years manifesting.
But like I say, there's tons of things that you can be doing. And if, like I say, that's the key question, is this impacting the quality of my life? Because remember, what I do is I go into organizations, because at the very, very least, what's happening is we're seeing a downturn in productivity from menopausal women, and that's out of ignorance, because nobody's told us. So we don't appreciate that's what's happening to our minds and our bodies is hormone related. So women are thinking, oh, I just can't do this anymore. And especially if somebody's worked or done what they've done for a couple of years, because you've got a comparison, haven't you? You go, well, I can get up in the morning, and I know I'm good at these things, and I know I enjoy these things, and I know what I'm capable of. And then this menopause thing happens, but nobody's told us. So we're going, well, I'm feeling a bit anxious these days, and I feel a bit more tired, and I can't really concentrate like I used to. And so they're putting 2 and 2 together and coming up with 45. And the end result, the absolute worst thing that's happening, and it's happening all of the time, women are leaving. They're walking out of their positions out of absolute and utter ignorance, because they're feeling a bit meh, and they haven't associated that with menopause, because the thing we've heard about is hot flushes, and a lot of women go, well, it could be the menopause. I'm not having hot flushes. I'm like, you might never get hot flushes. You just might never.
Yeah.
And so I'm just not having it. I'm just not having this level of ignorance.
So
So
are we
I'm on
not
a mission.
want a world that's run purely by middle-aged men because the women have left due to the menopause?
Well, I wrote an article, you know, Georgina, and people can find this on my website, why I think there's less women in director positions, in senior positions, because I think this life event called the menopause comes along roughly for most women in their mid-40s. Nobody's told us. So we're thinking, oh, I just can't do this anymore. And they're leaving.
Yeah.
And the other point that I want to make, I know you haven't asked the question, but I'll share this anyway, is a real shocking statistic is it's estimated that up to 1 in 100 humans, so 1 in 100 women, can be going through what's classed as early menopause. And that's anybody under the age of 45. So we've got to get away from this, the view of this woman of a certain age tag that I keep getting, you know, I'll rock up to companies and go, oh yes, Sharon, you can talk to my women of a certain age. I'm like, what does that even mean? What do you mean by that?
All women, for sure.
And it's sadly the main reasons that I've read about, and that I've, again, the women that I've met, the main reasons for going through this early menopause. And if you're under 40, the term that's used is POI, which I'm not a fan of. It's classed as premature ovarian insufficiency. I'm not really a fan of that term. But that's the medical term. And it means that most often women will be going through early menopause because of chemical and medical reasons. So this is cancer treatments. And this is things like hysterectomies, which are all too common these days. And what that can mean is women can be plunged into menopause the day after.
Right.
Like the day after. So not only have they got to contend, you know, with the mental and physical effects of those treatments and surgeries, they could be going into menopause the day after. So I met one woman and she was really smart. She was going in for a full hysterectomy. And it happened to be a he, it could have been anybody. But she happened to have done her research. So she just said to her consultant, what can I expect from I've read about menopause, what will it be like? And he said, oh, don't worry, it'll be a couple of hot flushes and then you'll be done. This woman was on her knees with symptoms. She was overwhelmed.
It'll just be a couple of hot flushes and then it'll be over.
Yeah, that was his description to her.
So I'm going to check myself on that, in that I just said I think we need to speak to all women about this, but maybe we need to include all people, actually.
Everyone.
Was quite ignorant in what I said there, yeah.
No, it's not ignorant. No, and don't beat yourself up, Georgina. I say menopause impacts everybody is my view in it. So it might be physically and mentally impacting me and my body. But what I say is we women are insidious. We're kind of everywhere. And you will know, love, and, you know, work, you know, we'll be around you in some shape or form. So probably some of the most profound feedback I've had has been from men who've come to my sessions and younger people. So I've had a couple of men who've come to my sessions, totally unwillingly, I might add, because they're leaders in their business and they're being told, you need to go and learn about this menopause thing. And they're going, because my sessions are up to 2 hours long. So you can see them like, oh. But I've had 2 men after the event who've emailed me to say, Sharon, learning about menopause has probably helped to save my marriage.
Yeah, I can totally imagine that. Yeah, it's the same thing with the menstrual cycle. I said, anybody who knows anybody who menstruates, you want to listen to this information about the menstrual cycle, because it'll just give you a level of empathy and compassion that you don't have right now because you don't understand.
Well, I'll tell you a story, which is one of the stories that I tell when I'm talking to managers, to leaders. And it was the session, it was a great session, but there was more men than women in the room. It was brilliant because I love talking to the men. And I was telling this story about a woman. She was a senior director in the boardroom, and her description was she was the only woman in the boardroom, and her colleagues were middle-aged white men. That was her description. So I said she was in the boardroom, and the meet was nearly finished, and she felt like she was having probably a flood. And so I'd used this term flood a couple of times describing, and this guy, hats off to him, he went, Sharon, he said, you said ask any questions. I went, yeah. I went, you've said flood. What are you talking about, man? And I said, well, I'm just going to tell you how I would describe it in my own special Sharon way. I says, when your period can be so heavy, it can be running down your legs. And he looked at me, he's looking at his colleagues, he's going, you're joking. I went, I'm not joking. And I said, I'm going to kind of blame womankind for this. I said, because what we tend to do is, and it's happened to me on the odd occasion, I said, what we do is we'll call our friends, whoever's around, and we'll sort it out in the moment, in real time. I said, so at no time when I've come back to him indoors and I'm eating my tea or I'm sitting on the settee door, go, oh, I had this flood episode today. It's never, I don't talk about it. We just deal with it in the moment. So I said, it's kind of our fault that you don't know these things happen because we're just pretty stoic and we just get on with it.
Yeah.
And he came up to me at the end, obviously this was pre-COVID, and he went, I'm going to go home and buy my wife the biggest bunch of flowers because I literally had no idea.
Oh, that's so nice. That's
that
like
this thing happens.
My eyes.
Mm-hmm.
That's so lovely.
So we've got, in my opinion, I say everyone, because it's 100% of 50% of the world.
Yeah.
It's 100% of 50%. So I say it impacts everybody. So, you know, and I had a young woman come to a session, you know, when she came along, and she obviously she didn't participate too much in it, but towards the end she said, you know what, I've come along because I think my mum is going through the menopause, and we know now statistically younger people are living longer at home. We know that's true. Or they're even returning back home because of, you know, the housing market, you know, unemployment and all these horrible things that are happening. So she was like, my mum threw a butter dish at my head when I was leaving the house this morning. I was like, well, that's not necessarily a symptom of menopause, but yes, I can see how it could be linked.
Or so you just really annoyed her.
Yes, absolutely. But what was great was she came along the session, she learned all about the stuff, and she went home and had a real adult conversation with her mum. And it turned out that she encouraged her mother to go along to the GP. It turned out she was perimenopausal. She was going through the menopause. She actually got some HRT, and it transformed their relationship. All just by learning about the menopause, which her company were kind of the, oh, it's only women of a certain age that need to go. And she said, oh, do you mind if I go? And I'm saying, don't exclude anybody from the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
We all know people who are that age, you know, we're talking between 35 and dead, aren't we?
Yeah. Well, yeah, like I say, 45 is the average, but remember, 1 in 100 humans will be classed as early menopause. Yeah. So like I say, roughly if you're in your mid-40s onwards and you're starting to have these strange symptoms, things that you can't put your finger on, it is likely that it is menopause related. It's that you'll be in that perimenopause state. However, remember, for a small percentage of people, it may not be. Could be other conditions. So remember, the key thing is you need to know your body best of all. And I'm hoping this is in congruence with what you talk about as well.
Absolutely.
You know, you have to know it. But you can't get out of it. Like I say, you can't buy magic. You know, you can't get a golden ticket, even though some women will have that ticket, the 20% club. You can't. There you go. Well, I thought it was going to be me as well. Of course, I was like, well, that's whatever that is, that's going to happen to me. How wrong was I? Never mind. But like I say, the brilliant news is to end on a high. There will be a solution, but you might have to work. Some of you might have to work quite hard to find it.
Yeah.
But it will be there. But you owe it to yourself because you're not going to get the time back. You
do owe it to yourself. Yeah. It's going to be very empowering, isn't it, when you find that find what works for you. And you know, just to give you some generic advice, is we've already touched on this. Everyone, I believe, should practice mindfulness. Doesn't have to be meditation, but that could be helpful. Everybody should do some form of training. You know, you're not over the hill when you hit a certain age or you reach a certain point in life. Strength training in particular.
Absolutely.
All women, please get into some form of strength training. Get outside, get fresh air, get your vitamin D.
Yeah.
Good diet, plenty of water.
All of that. Like I say, what you do is absolutely fits into that DIY box. It's that you can help yourself at any time by, you know, what exercise you take, what you eat, what you drink. You know, are you a smoker? Are you not? And again, talking about it, so doing stuff like, so I'm delighted. Thank you so much for, you know, giving me the opportunity.
I'm so glad that we've done it. It got to the point where it was inevitable that we needed to do a podcast chat, and I'm so glad that we have, and I'm so glad that it was you. So thank you very much, Sharon.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure.
And I hope that everybody listens to this. I hope that you share it with everybody that you know. Doesn't have to be reproducing females. Everybody, share it far and wide, please. Tag us.
Do.
Come to our website. We'll link to Sharon's website in the show notes. We'll link to your Facebook group as well, if that's all right. And everybody just get involved, keep chatting, keep talking about it.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Sharon.
Thank you.
If you want to improve your well-being in a non-wanky way, you can join hundreds of other like-minded people in my monthly subscription group for live training sessions, daily workouts, nutrition tips, meditations, and more. Only a tenner a month. Email me now, georgina@georginahalltraining.com. Thank you for listening to the Phemale Empowered Podcast. If you want to hear more from us, you can follow us on Instagram @Phemale Empowered, where you can also get involved with our discussions and feel free to send us a message.